today I'm going to be talking to you about the piece of music that we are preparing for the advanced orchestras at the Benedetti Sessions. This particular piece is written by Edward Elgar. Now, he is perhaps the most beloved British composer, and we felt it fitting to play a piece of music by him. Now, Elgar is a composer that I encountered for the first time playing his beautiful little miniatures that he wrote for violin and piano, and was at the time falling deeply in love with his wife. Salut d'amour, chanson de matin, chanson de nuit, amazing French accent I have. Later on at the Yehudi Menuhin School, I fell deep in love with the Elgar Cello Concerto, of course performed by another British icon, Jacqueline du Pré. This concerto, the cello concerto, gave me a totally different understanding from the picture that you see of him. He always appeared a little bit distant, such a noble gentleman that was so controlled and extremely sophisticated, this huge mustache, and he had this kind of persona, you would say, this kind of aura around him that gave an impression that I have through reading and learning a lot about him as a person. Come to find out, it's not an accurate picture. He was a far more nuanced and complex character, very different to that of English nobility. There was no doubt that Elgar loved deeply and loved passionately. He wasn't a controlled man or somebody that was totally practical and pragmatic all the time. He was a dreamer. He was a romantic. He did all kinds of things that kind of didn't make sense in his life. If you take the violin concerto, for example, and look at some of the writing of him discussing his violin concerto, he constantly talks about how he knows that this part and that is a little bit indulgent, but he just loves it so much, he's just getting carried away. He was somebody that allowed his feelings to bubble to the surface, especially when it came to music and to the love of his life. This particular piece, Introduction and Allegro, I would like to start you off focusing with the largest objectives. We could call those something like the attitude of the piece, or the general style of the piece, or the overall feeling we want to convey with this piece of music. Of course, as with every single piece of classical music, it takes you on a very colourful journey. We never stay with one emotion, we never stay with one sound, we never stay with one idea. But there has to be an underlying warmth and an underlying beauty to the sound, something that always has that romanticism, it's like an optimism, like anything is possible. Okay, so we'd like to set a few tasks for you this week. On our website, you can find a downloadable score of the Introduction and Allegro, and you can also find a link to a performance of this piece by John Elliott Gardner and the amazing Vienna Philharmonic. It's a very intense recording, and I absolutely love it. But equally would encourage you to listen to as many recordings as possible. I want you always to search far and wide, be really curious about all the different interpretations of any given piece, and try to work out the subtle differences between them, try to work out where your taste lies and what in particular makes you feel the most. Obviously, we're going to be helping you with practice over the next few months and giving you loads and loads of tips and guidance over how we believe that you can prepare as best as possible for something like a workshop. But for now, the most important thing is to be immersed in the feeling of a piece of music. That is actually the first step in good, high quality preparation. Because if you love a piece and you've contextualized it and you've created a personal, emotional connection to that piece, you're actually going to prepare and practice very differently. You're going to prepare with more passion and more concentration. So how do we actually achieve that in a technical sense? Now, you know, I hate separating technique and music. Even though I talk about technique all the time and physicality all the time, I don't see them as something that is separate to your end goal, which is basically to express something as fiercely as you possibly can. So I'm going to talk about these categories, but I want you to constantly keep all the balls in the air at the same time. Every time we're talking about the physicality of this piece, bear in mind what is our objective. It's to create warmth. It's to create that optimism, that heartful feeling, that kind of generosity of character and generosity of expression. Right, so let's address our general physicality for the beginning of the Elgar. How are we actually going to get that generosity in the sound and in the spirit? Now, I would say the last thing we want is to restrict our sound or our movement. This is the perfect vehicle for exploring as much sound and as much movement as possible. Now, we start on one down bow and then immediately another down bow. So I want you to take this as an exercise in movement. Now, I am standing here without a violin because I want you to do the same, and it's the same for the cello. When I see you all next year and we start this, I don't want to see anybody starting off like this and like this, scared about hitting the notes, scared about crunching. I want to see everybody as if you're breathing in, breathing out on the down bow, and then another one on the next bow. Huge movements. I want to create space and freedom of feeling. You can see I'm not controlling anything that I'm doing. Now I want you to do the same thing with vibrato. What I do not want to see or feel is tension. We want to create the most, this is just an exercise, by the way, it'll be a little bit more controlled in the end, but I want to see the most kind of, almost think warbly, think like you're trying to loosen everything up. So let's try again. One thing that Elgar does throughout this piece is 3 against 2. So it's so important that we address the idea of triplets within a duplet with a little bit of thought as opposed to just doing it. Now, I think there are so many different ways of playing and approaching triplets, depending on where you are in the world, depending on what style of music. Not all triplets are played in the same way. In this instance, I would say we want them to be as stretched and as fat as they possibly can be. We don't want them to have too much direction or for them to be kind of squished. If you put a metronome on and see how late can you possibly play those triplets. So how can you fit them in and be as late as possible? Ba, 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 like that. So you're really kind of stretching them as much as possible. Now that will go hand in hand with you using literally all the bow. And I don't want you to worry at this stage about sounding too good. So I'm obviously not sounding very good, but just keeping everything moving, everything breathing, and everything very generous. Now, we are so honoured to have the phenomenal Natalia Louis Bassa conducting our advanced orchestra. She is the most explosive, expressive musician. She really makes you want to concentrate in her presence. She is extremely energetic, but all done with the kindest heart and with the most genuine feel for music and love for music. So I feel like we're incredibly lucky to have her conducting our orchestras.
Hello from Yorkshire. Here I am, looking forward to meeting all of you next year, either in Glasgow or London or wherever is taking us around the United Kingdom. Please keep practicing and see you soon. We should always remember that in Elgar we have got a genius, a composer who never ever studied in a conservatoire and who created the most sublime music with the beautiful melodies and extremely wonderful compositional techniques. Elgar invented the term nobilmente, which means in a noble manner, with grandeur, majestically. For me, being Venezuelan and interpreting this music is not easy. However, as an Elgar ambassador myself, I always try to respect and transmit this term to every single piece of music that I study and perform. Elgar is for me gentle music, full of soul and commitment to beauty and love.
And lastly, we want to hear from you. So if you can subscribe to this channel and also write comments below. We want to know, what are your impressions of Elgar? What are your impressions of him as a person, and also this particular piece, or perhaps some of the other pieces that we've mentioned? How does this piece make you feel? And perhaps give us some ideas of what you would like to experience and achieve when we all meet in January. I can't wait to meet you all. Yay!